The first warning didn't come from Emily Walker. It came from the dog. No one in Aurora, Colorado, expected an ordinary winter afternoon to become the moment that would later circle the globe. The kind of day that slips by unnoticed. Thin snow dusting the lawns, a pale sun hanging low, neighbors waving as they cleared their driveways. The world felt slow, almost mercifully so. Emily stood by the front door of her small craftsman house, slipping her gloves into her coat pockets while rocking her weight from one foot to the other. At 33, she looked older than her years, the kind of tired that sleep never quite fixed. Long shifts in the ER did that to people. So did grief. Behind her, the house hummed with familiar sounds, the soft whir of the heater, the faint crackle of the baby monitor, the slow ticking of the clock above the kitchen sink. In the living room, 9-month-old Caleb lay drowsy in his crib, his small fingers curled through the metal bars, brushing against a patch of coarse fur on the floor beside him. Rex didn't move. The retired K9 lay stretched out on his side, broad chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. His coat had gone a little gray around the muzzle since the accident, but his posture still carried the discipline of a working dog. He was never far from Caleb. Emily had stopped questioning that months ago. She checked the time on her phone again. Level moderate. 10 minutes. That was all. Mrs. Collins next door needed a signature for a homeowner's form. Nothing more. Emily had debated waiting until morning, but the thought of one less errand before her night shift felt like oxygen. "I'll be right back," she murmured, mostly to herself. She stepped into the nursery doorway and watched her son for a moment longer than necessary. Caleb's eyelids fluttered, heavy with sleep. He made a small sound, something between a sigh and a hum, and tightened his grip on Rex's fur. Emily smiled, the ache in her chest softening just a little. "You're okay, buddy," she whispered. "Mama's just next door." Rex's ears twitched at the sound of her voice, but his eyes remained closed. Emily took that as reassurance. He'd been trained to stay calm, to assess before reacting. Her husband used to say Rex could read a room better than most people. Her husband. The thought came uninvited, as it always did. A flash of a uniform folded too neatly in a drawer. A badge still hanging by the door. A phone call that had changed everything. Emily swallowed and forced herself back to the present. She grabbed her keys, then paused. "Rex," she said quietly. The dog opened one eye. It was a habit she couldn't break, talking to him as if he understood every word. Maybe he did. Maybe that was why she trusted him more than anyone else left in her life. "Just 10 minutes," she said, her voice light, careful. "Watch him for me, okay?" Rex lifted his head this time. His gaze moved from Emily to the crib, then back again. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Alert. Measured. He stood and stepped closer to the crib, placing his body squarely between Caleb and the doorway. Emily hesitated. A flicker of unease brushed the back of her neck. The kind you ignore because it has no name, because life had already taken enough from her, and she refused to live afraid of shadows. "It's nothing," she murmured, half to Rex, half to herself. Outside, the front porch camera blinked once as she opened the door. A gust of cold air swept in, sharp and clean. Emily pulled her coat tighter and glanced back one last time. Caleb slept on. Rex stood guard. "Good boy," she whispered. She closed the door behind her and stepped into the quiet street, unaware that the moment she left the house, the balance inside it shifted. That the dog she trusted more than anyone else had already sensed something she could not, and that the 10 minutes she thought she had were about to become the longest of her life. The moment Emily's footsteps faded down the icy sidewalk, the house seemed to settle into a deeper silence. Inside, nothing looked different. The same soft light pooled across the hardwood floors. The same framed photos lined the walls, smiling snapshots from another life, before sirens and hospital hallways and unpaid medical bills became part of Emily Walker's daily vocabulary. But the air felt thinner now, stretched tight, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Rex stood unmoving beside the crib. Caleb shifted in his sleep, releasing a faint, breathy sound. One small foot pressed against the mattress, then relaxed again. His fingers loosened from the bars, brushing Rex's shoulder before falling back against the blanket. The dog adjusted his stance just enough to stay close, his body angled between the crib and the hallway leading toward the back of the house. The home Emily had fought to keep was modest, worn at the edges. The mortgage payment was already 2 weeks late. A folded notice from the bank sat unopened on the kitchen counter, weighed down by a stack of insurance paperwork and a hospital bill stamped "Final Reminder" in red. Life after loss didn't fall apart all at once. It frayed slowly, quietly, until every small decision felt heavy. Rex knew this house in ways no one else did. He remembered nights when Emily came home after 16-hour shifts, shoes left by the door, shoulders shaking as she sank onto the couch. He remembered the smell of antiseptic clinging to her clothes, the sound of her whispering apologies to a baby who didn't yet understand time or absence. He remembered another man's boots by the door, another voice in the kitchen, another heartbeat in the rhythm of the home. Those boots never came back. The day the police knocked, Rex had been there. He hadn't barked then either. He'd watched as Emily slid down the wall, phone clattering to the floor, a sound pulled from her chest that didn't seem human at all. After that, everything changed. The badge on the shelf, the folded flag, the quiet. Rex had changed too. A shattered shoulder from his final deployment had ended his career early. Some officers called it bad luck. Others quietly called him done. No more patrols, no more night shifts, no more commands shouted over radio static. Just a dog with scars, a handler gone, and a home that felt like it might collapse if one more thing went wrong. Yet here he stood. The heater clicked on, blowing warm air through the vents. Somewhere in the house, a pipe groaned. Outside, a car passed, tires crunching lightly over packed snow. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Rex registered them all, cataloging, dismissing. Then the porch camera flickered. just once. No chime sounded inside. No alert buzzed on Emily's phone. The small red light blinked and went dark again. Anyone watching casually would have missed it. Rex did not. His ears angled forward. His breathing slowed. Not faster, not heavier, but measured, intent. He stepped closer to the crib, his flank brushing the edge of it as he lowered his head slightly, eyes fixed toward the front of the house. Caleb stirred again. His eyes opened halfway, unfocused, clouded with sleep. He made a soft sound, confused but not frightened, and turned his face toward Rex. The dog didn't look back. Instead, he lowered himself into a crouch. Time 300 chi. Muscles coiled beneath his fur, ready without being tense. The house felt warm, lived in, vulnerable. Outside, somewhere just beyond the reach of the porch light, something shifted. Not loud, not sudden, just enough to change the shape of the quiet. Rex's tail went still. The dog did not growl. He did not bark. Those sounds belonged to warning and reaction. This was neither. This was assessment. This was the calm before motion. Caleb's hand lifted weakly and found Rex's fur again, fingers curling instinctively as if drawn to the steady presence beside him. The baby's breathing slowed, syncing with the rhythm of the dog's chest. Whatever had stirred beyond the door, Rex had already accounted for it. And somewhere down the block, Emily Walker was signing a piece of paper, thinking about her night shift, her medical insurance deductible, and how she'd stretch the next paycheck just a little further, never imagining that her home security system wasn't the camera on her porch. It was the dog standing watch in her son's room. Rex felt it before he heard anything. The air inside the house shifted. Not colder, not warmer, just wrong. The kind of change that never showed up on a thermostat or a screen. The kind that lived in the quiet spaces between sounds. He lifted his head a fraction higher, nostrils flaring once as he drew in a slow, deliberate breath. Nothing familiar had changed. That was the problem. The heater continued its low hum. The clock in the kitchen ticked on, steady and indifferent. Snow brushed softly against the siding as the wind changed direction outside. All of it ordinary. All of it accounted for. Rex didn't move away from the crib. Instead, he adjusted his stance, placing his body more squarely between Caleb and the hallway. His shoulder pressed lightly against the crib's wooden frame, a silent barrier that hadn't been there moments earlier. In the nursery, the baby monitor crackled, just a flicker of static, a brief hiss that rose and vanished again. It wasn't loud enough to wake a sleeping adult, but it was enough to pull Caleb from the edge of his dreams. His eyes opened wider this time, blue and unfocused, searching the dim room. He didn't cry. He watched. Rex's ears lifted fully now, rotating in slow, precise movements, not twitching, not startled, listening. The way he had been trained to listen. Past walls, past distance, past what most people thought was possible. His breathing slowed further, deep and controlled, each inhale measured. Outside, the wind shifted again, sending loose snow skittering across the driveway. The sound brushed faintly against the front door. Rex ignored it. Snow had weight. Wind had rhythm. This had neither. The porch camera activated. A soft mechanical click echoed through the quiet living room as the sensor tripped. The light outside flared briefly, casting a pale glow across the snow-covered steps, and then shut off again. Inside the house, no alert sounded. Rex's gaze locked toward the front of the house, eyes narrowing as his muscles tightened beneath his fur. He did not bark. He did not advance. He did not retreat. Instead, he stepped laterally, widening his stance so that no clear line existed between the hallway and the crib. Caleb shifted, unsettled now. A small sound escaped his throat. Not fear, but confusion. His hand lifted again, fingers searching until they found Rex's leg. He gripped tightly, knuckles pale against the dark fur. Rex lowered his head just enough for his shoulder to brush the side of the crib. A grounding touch. A promise without language. In another room, the baby monitor crackled again. Longer this time. The noise rose, then dropped abruptly into silence. Rex's tail stilled completely, aligning with his spine. His eyes tracked toward the back of the house, then returned to the front door. Something had crossed a line. Not inside. Not yet. But close enough to be counted. Rex's training whispered through old muscle memory. Position. Protect. Assess. He shifted his weight forward, claws flexing slightly against the hardwood floor, though he made no sound. His posture changed subtly, enough that anyone familiar with working dogs would have recognized it instantly. This was not rest. This was readiness. Caleb's breathing quickened, sensing the tension even if he didn't understand it. His gaze followed Rex's line of sight, tiny brow furrowing as if trying to solve a puzzle far beyond his age. He whimpered once, then went quiet again, his hand tightening in Rex's fur. The dog did not look back. Outside, somewhere beyond the porch light's reach, a shape paused, not moving, not leaving, just waiting. Rex felt the pressure of it like a weight against his chest. His jaw set, teeth pressing together as he exhaled slowly through his nose. No growl, no warning sound. He wasn't trying to scare anything away. He was preparing. The house, warm and familiar moments ago, now felt exposed. Every window, every door, every thin pane of glass separating inside from out. Rex accounted for each one in turn, calculating angles and distance the way he had been trained to do in darker places, under louder skies. Caleb shifted again, his foot brushing Rex's chest. The contact steadied him. Rex held his ground. Whatever had come near the house wasn't something to be chased. Not yet. It was something to be read, measured, understood. And until that understanding was complete, Rex would not move from where he stood. Down the block, Emily Walker felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to hurry. She glanced toward her house, heart fluttering for reasons she couldn't name, and forced herself to finish signing her name. Inside the nursery, The retired K9 remained perfectly still. Instinct had spoken, and Rex was listening. Emily Walker didn't realize she was holding her breath until Mrs. Collins reached out and touched her arm. "You all right there, honey?" the older woman asked gently, her voice carrying that familiar Midwestern softness, the kind people picked up after decades of small-town living, even in a growing Colorado suburb like Aurora. Emily blinked and smiled, a reflex more than a feeling. "Yeah, sorry. Just tired." Mrs. Collins nodded as if she understood far more than Emily had said. She always did. Retired school secretary, widowed, lived alone with a calico cat that never showed its face. The kind of neighbor who noticed when trash bins stayed out too long, when lights went off earlier than usual, when a family stopped being a family. "Night shifts'll do that to you," Mrs. Collins said, adjusting her cardigan. "Come on in. I just need you to sign here for the HOA paperwork. 10 minutes, tops." 10 minutes, Emily repeated, more to reassure herself than anyone else. As she stepped inside the warm, dimly lit house, she felt the pull again. That quiet tug in her chest, sharp and unwelcome. She glanced back down the sidewalk toward her own place. From here she could see the edge of her roof, the faint glow of the porch light reflecting off thin snow. Rex would be fine, she told herself. Rex was always fine. Mrs. Collins shuffled toward the dining table, papers neatly stacked, pen already uncapped. The smell of brewed coffee lingered in the air, mixed with something floral and old-fashioned. Safe, ordinary. Nothing like the sterile scent of the hospital, or the quiet tension of her own house lately. Emily sat, rubbing her hands together for warmth. Her fingers still felt stiff from carrying IV bags and pushing gurneys all night. As Mrs. Collins began explaining the form, something about updated parking regulations, Emily nodded along, but her mind drifted. She saw Caleb's face, the way his eyes followed Rex around the room, the way his tiny hand wrapped into the dog's fur like it was the most natural thing in the world. She saw Rex, too, standing at attention when she left, watching her with those steady eyes that had once scanned alleys and doorways beside her husband. "You know," Mrs. Collins said casually, sliding the paper toward her, "I never did ask, that dog of yours. He was a police dog, wasn't he?" Emily hesitated, pen hovering. "Yeah, K9 unit. He retired early." "Must have been something working alongside officers," the woman said. "Takes a special kind of loyalty." Emily swallowed. "Yeah, he's family." Mrs. Collins smiled. "Good. Babies should grow up around that kind of loyalty." The words landed heavier than they should have. Emily signed her name, slid the paper back, suddenly eager to leave. "I should get back. Caleb's probably waking up." "You're fine," Mrs. Collins waved her off kindly. "It's barely been 5 minutes." 5 minutes. Emily stood, pulling her coat tighter. The unease hadn't gone away. If anything, it had sharpened. Outside, the cold bit sharper than before. The sky had shifted, clouds rolling in low and heavy, muting the afternoon light. Emily glanced toward her house again. From this angle, everything looked the same. Still, normal. She started walking. Halfway down the sidewalk, she felt it again, that urge to hurry. Her steps quickened, boots crunching over snow. She pulled her phone from her pocket, thumb hovering over the home security app. No alerts. She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Get it together. Time, Forhunums," she murmured. "You're overtired, that's all." Behind her, Mrs. Collins closed her door, the latch clicking softly. Emily didn't see the porch camera light blink on again. She didn't see the shadow pause just outside its range. And she didn't hear the low, almost inaudible sound Rex made in the nursery as he shifted his weight. Silent, deliberate, and very much awake. 1. Leaving the baby alone. 2. Ignoring your instincts. 3. Trusting that nothing ever happens here. Comment 1, 2, or 3 below. Just one number. The porch camera activated again. This time, it stayed on. The small red indicator glowed steadily, unnoticed by anyone inside the house. Anyone human, at least. The lens adjusted automatically, compensating for the dimmer afternoon light as clouds swallowed what little sun remained over Aurora. Snow reflected just enough brightness to outline the front steps, the railing, the welcome mat Emily had bought on clearance years ago. Nothing moved. For several seconds, the footage showed only stillness, a quiet suburban scene that would later fool thousands into thinking nothing was wrong yet. Inside the nursery, Rex felt the shift instantly. Not sound, not smell. Presence. His head turned slowly, aligning with the exact angle of the camera outside, as if he could see through walls and insulation. His ears tilted forward, then flattened slightly. Not in fear, but in calculation. His body moved without haste. One step, then another, until he lay down directly across the nursery doorway. Not blocking the shutdown crib, blocking the path. The movement was subtle, controlled. The kind of positioning that never made it into training manuals, because it couldn't be taught. Only learned. Through years of experience in places where hesitation got people hurt. Caleb stirred. His eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the low light. He didn't cry. He didn't fuss. He simply turned his head and watched Rex settle into place. The baby's breathing slowed, as if reassured by the shape of the dog's body between him and the rest of the house. On the footage, a shape appeared. At first, it was nothing more than a distortion at the edge of the frame, a shadow where shadow shouldn't be. The camera tried to refocus. Its motor hummed faintly as it adjusted exposure. Then the shape resolved. A person stood just beyond the porch light's reach. Still. Silent. Hood pulled low. Hands not visible. The figure didn't approach the door. Didn't knock. Didn't ring the bell. He stood there, as if studying the house, counting windows, measuring distance, memorizing patterns. Inside, Rex did not move. His chest expanded with a slow inhale. then fell again. His jaw tightened slightly, lips pulling back just enough to expose the edge of his teeth. Not a snarl, not a threat. A readiness. The camera captured a small movement. The figure shifted his weight. Rex's head snapped a fraction of an inch to the left, eyes narrowing. The timing was exact. The reaction immediate. No delay. No confusion. No need for confirmation. Caleb made a soft sound then. Not a cry. Just a breathy noise, curious and unsure. His hand reached out, brushing the blanket, then extending farther until it found Rex's back. The dog didn't turn around. Instead, he lowered his body further, making himself broader, heavier, more present. A wall with a heartbeat. On the footage, the figure leaned forward slightly, not enough to enter the light. Time 200 mams, just enough to test it. The camera's microphone picked up nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, no wind. Anyone watching later would comment on that. How quiet it all was. How unnatural the silence felt. Inside the house, the quiet pressed in. Rex shifted his weight again, claws flexing once against the hardwood floor before settling. His tail lay flat, unmoving. Every sense he had stretched outward, mapping a threat he could not see but fully understood. The figure outside did something small, almost insignificant. He raised his head. Rex's ears flattened completely. This wasn't a lost neighbor. This wasn't a delivery driver. This wasn't someone looking for help. The posture was wrong, too patient, too deliberate. The camera recorded Rex's next movement through the house's interior feed. He rose, not abruptly, not dramatically. He stood and took 2 precise steps, positioning himself fully across the nursery doorway. Shoulders squared, spine straight, gaze locked forward. Caleb watched him, eyes wide now. For the first time, uncertainty crossed the baby's face. His mouth opened slightly, as if deciding whether to cry. Rex shifted his head just enough to brush the crib with his shoulder again. A grounding signal. Caleb stayed quiet. Outside, the figure did not retreat. He waited. And somewhere halfway down the block, Emily Walker felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She stopped walking, pulled it out. No alert. No notification. Just a phantom buzz. Nothing more than her imagination, she told herself. She looked up at her house again. Everything appeared normal. Behind the front door, the retired K9 held his position, every muscle ready, every instinct engaged. Standing guard while the camera captured the first undeniable truth. Whatever was outside wasn't there by accident. The figure stepped closer, not into the light, never fully into the light, but close enough that the porch camera finally caught details it hadn't before. A dark hoodie pulled low. Gloves, thin and tight, meant for grip, not warmth. The man's posture wasn't rushed, wasn't nervous. He moved the way people did when they had time, when they believed they were alone. Inside the house, Rex felt the shift before the camera registered it. His chest expanded, then stilled. The low hum of the heater faded into the background as something older, deeper took over. His muscles locked into a stance that hadn't been needed in years. Balanced, grounded, ready, not to chase, not to attack, to hold. The man outside leaned his head slightly, as if listening. Rex answered with a sound so low it barely registered as sound at all, a controlled rumble buried deep in his chest. Time 2000 psalms. It wasn't aggression. It was information. A warning delivered without panic. Caleb's eyes followed the movement of Rex's head. He didn't cry. That was the part that would unsettle people later when they watched the footage. Babies cried at sudden noises, at strangers, at silence that felt wrong. Caleb didn't. He stared at Rex with complete trust, his small face serious in a way no 9-month-old should look. His fingers tightened into the fur again, grounding himself the only way he knew how. Outside, the man shifted his weight. The porch camera captured the movement clearly now. A slow step. Careful. Testing. He didn't touch the door. Didn't reach for the handle. Instead, he angled himself slightly, peering toward the side window that looked into the living room. Rex moved instantly. He didn't rush the sound. He didn't break position. He stepped sideways, broadening his frame in the nursery doorway. Time 900 mems, blocking the direct line from the hallway to the crib. His head stayed angled forward, eyes tracking through walls, through space, through intent. The man froze, just for a beat. Not because he'd heard Rex, there was nothing to hear, but because something had changed. People who hunted patterns noticed when patterns broke, when a house that should feel empty suddenly didn't. Inside, the baby monitor crackled again. This time, it didn't stop. Static bled through the speaker in uneven bursts, filling the nursery with a sound that made Caleb finally whimper. A small, fragile noise. Not fear yet. Confusion tipping toward it. Rex lowered his body immediately, bringing himself closer to the floor, closer to the crib. His head dipped, brushing the wooden slats as if to remind Caleb he was there. That grounding touch worked. The whimper faded. Outside, the man took another step. The camera caught his face partially now. Time 900. Not clearly, not enough to identify him, but enough to see the lower half. Jaw tight, lips pressed thin, focused. This wasn't a mistake. Rex's tail stiffened completely. For the first time since Emily left, Rex allowed himself one clear assessment. If the man crossed the threshold, there would be no hesitation, no waiting, no calculation. But until then, Rex would not leave the baby, would not give ground. The man raised a hand, not to knock, to test the glass. His knuckles hovered an inch from the window, motionless, suspended in decision. The camera zoomed slightly, reacting automatically. Inside, Rex growled again, still low, still controlled, but this time it carried weight. Caleb's eyes widened. He sucked in a breath, then went still, sensing the shift, even if he didn't understand it. The man's hand dropped. He stepped back half a pace. That pause mattered. Later, people would argue about it, in comment sections and news panels, whether the dog scared him, whether the man changed his mind, whether it was coincidence. But Rex knew the truth. He had been seen. Not by eyes, by instinct. Somewhere down the block, Emily's pace quickened without her realizing it. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. She glanced down again, thumb brushing the screen. Still no alerts. The house stood quiet against the snow. Inside, Rex held his position, breathing slow and deep, anchoring the room with his presence. Caleb leaned forward slightly in his crib, forehead resting against the bars, eyes never leaving the dog. Outside, the man remained just beyond the light, waiting, watching, measuring time. And in that stretch of silence, the line between safety and disaster narrowed to the width of a doorway, and a retired police dog who refused to move. Emily's breath fogged in front of her as she picked up her pace. She hadn't planned to hurry. Her body just decided for her. Each step came faster than the last, boots crunching against the thin layer of snow that now felt louder than it should. The quiet street suddenly seemed too open, too exposed, like something could step out from anywhere. She glanced at her phone again. Still nothing. No motion alert. No security notification. No missed call. "Get a grip," she muttered under her breath. "You've worked trauma nights. This is nothing." But her chest stayed tight. Inside the house, time moved differently. Rex had not shifted positions since the man stepped back. His body remained planted across the nursery doorway, muscles engaged but controlled, like a bridge holding under strain. His breathing was steady now, not slow, not fast, calibrated. Caleb watched him. The baby's eyes were wide, reflecting the dim nursery light. He wasn't crying. That silence felt heavier than any scream. His small hands rested on the crib rail, knuckles pale, his body leaning forward as if drawn toward Rex's presence. The baby monitor hissed once more, then went quiet. Outside, the man moved. The porch camera captured it clearly this time. He stepped sideways, staying just outside the reach of the light, angling his body toward the side of the house. His movements were unhurried, deliberate. He wasn't leaving. He was repositioning. Inside, Rex's head turned. Not abruptly, precisely. His gaze tracked the shift through walls and distance, ears rotating like finely tuned instruments. He didn't follow the sound of footsteps. There were none. He followed intent. Direction. The change in pressure humans never noticed until it was too late. Rex rose. This time the movement was unmistakable. He stood fully and took one step forward, then another, placing himself closer to the crib, narrowing the space between his body and Caleb. His back brushed the crib rail, grounding the baby again. His front paws spread slightly, claws gripping the hardwood for traction. Outside, the man reached the side of the house. The camera angle changed as the sensor followed him briefly, before losing sight. For a moment, the screen showed nothing but blank siding and drifting snow. That was when he tried the back door. Not forcefully, not yet. The handle turned just enough to test it. Inside the house, the sound barely registered. A faint click, a whisper of metal against metal. Anyone without training would have missed it entirely. Rex did not. His ears flattened. His body shifted forward, weight rolling onto his front legs. A low growl vibrated in his chest. Time 1200 mams. Deeper than before, vibrating through the floorboards. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Caleb startled. This time he cried. The sound was sudden, sharp, fragile. The first real cry since Emily had left. His face crumpled, tiny chest hitching as fear finally broke through confusion. Rex responded instantly. He lowered his body again, pressing closer to the crib. His head turned just enough to bring one steady eye into Caleb's view. The growl stopped, replaced by a steady exhale, warm and close. Caleb's cry softened, then stuttered into sobs. Outside, the man froze. The footage later would show the exact moment. How his head snapped toward the sound. How his posture changed when the baby cried. How his hand stayed on the handle for half a second longer than it should have. Inside, Rex made a decision. He did not advance. He did not retreat. He shifted sideways, placing his entire body between the nursery and the back hallway, sealing the line completely. His stance widened, his shoulders squared. If the door opened, Rex would be the first thing through it. And the last. Down the block, Emily broke into a jog. Her breath came faster now, burning in her lungs. She didn't know why she was running, only that every instinct screamed that 10 minutes had become too long. Her phone buzzed suddenly in her hand. She nearly dropped it. She stopped short, heart hammering, and looked down. Still nothing. Just a low battery warning. She let out a shaky laugh that didn't feel like relief. "You're losing it," she whispered. But she started running again. Inside the house, Rex held the line. Outside, the man slowly released the handle. He didn't retreat far. He stepped back just enough to think. The house was no longer an easy target. Something inside had shifted. Something, time 600 tums, was watching back. 10 minutes stretched thin, pulled tight between a mother hurrying home and a dog who had already decided how far he would go. And in that fragile gap of time, everything that mattered stood perfectly still, waiting to see which side would break first. The man leaned closer to the glass. Not the door this time. One of the narrow side windows near the back of the house. The kind most people forgot about. The kind that didn't trigger alarms unless they shattered. The porch camera couldn't see him anymore, but Rex could feel him. The pressure changed again, heavier now, closer. The kind of closeness that collapsed distance and turned possibility into intent. Rex's muscles tightened, not with panic, but with resolve. His entire body aligned toward the source, every instinct screaming that the next few seconds would matter more than anything that had come before. Caleb cried harder. The sound filled the nursery, raw and fragile, echoing off the walls. It wasn't hunger or discomfort anymore. It was fear. pure and instinctive, the kind that traveled through the air and reached places adults learn to ignore. Rex responded instantly. He moved, not toward the window, toward the crib. He stepped back, positioning his body so completely in front of Caleb that there was no longer a clear view of the baby from anywhere in the room. His shoulder pressed firmly against the crib rail, his head lowered, spine curved slightly, creating a living shield. This was the moment. If Rex chose to advance now, if he left the crib, he could reach the hallway in seconds. He could intercept. He could confront. Years of training surged through him, urging forward motion. But Rex didn't move. He stayed. Outside, the man's silhouette shifted. Through the thin glass, his face appeared briefly, just enough to see an outline, just enough to confirm what Rex already knew. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't chance. This was selection. A hand lifted. The glass trembled faintly as knuckles brushed against it. Not a knock. A test. A message sent through vibration rather than sound. Inside the house, the camera mounted. In the hallway, picked up the movement. Later, viewers would freeze the frame right there. They'd comment on how close it was, how thin the barrier looked, how one step in either direction could have changed everything. Rex's response was immediate and final. He rose onto his front legs, placing his paws firmly against the nursery floor, bracing himself. His body expanded, chest broad, stance unyielding. He let out a single sound, low, deep, and unmistakable. Not a bark, a boundary. Caleb's cry hitched, then faltered. His small body trembled, breath catching in uneven bursts. Rex turned his head just enough to bring his presence back into Caleb's line of sight, eyes steady, unwavering. "I'm here," that look said. The man froze. The footage showed it clearly. The way his posture shifted, how his shoulders stiffened, how his hand hovered and then slowly dropped. He leaned back from the glass, head tilting slightly as if trying to understand something that didn't make sense. The house was supposed to be empty. It wasn't. The silence stretched. Inside, Rex did not advance. He did not retreat. He held the space exactly as it was, forcing the choice onto the one outside. Seconds passed. Then the man stepped back. Not far. Just enough. Enough to think. Down the street, Emily was running now. Her breath burned. Her phone slipped in her hand as she fumbled with it, trying again to open the security app. Her heart hammered so hard it drowned out everything else. She didn't know why she was scared. Only that she was. Inside the nursery, Rex remained locked in place, every nerve alive. Caleb's cries softened to whimpers, his body sagging with exhaustion and fear. Rex stayed close, unmoving, his presence steady and absolute. The world outside the window no longer mattered. All that mattered was the line he had drawn. And on the other side of that line, the man made a decision. He stepped away from the glass, not retreating yet, but no longer advancing. The camera caught the movement just as Emily's house came back into view at the end of the block. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. One step more. one sound louder, one choice different. But for now, the line held. The man stepped back into shadow. Not retreat, reposition. Rex felt the difference immediately. The pressure didn't disappear. It shifted, sliding along the side of the house like a hand testing the edge of a blade. The kind of movement that looked cautious to a camera, but felt deliberate to something trained to read intent. Caleb whimpered again, the sound thin and exhausted, his small body sagging against the crib mattress. Fear had drained him. He wasn't crying to be heard anymore. He was crying to be held. Rex stayed where he was. Every instinct drilled into him over years of service pulled in opposite directions. Intercept, advance, neutralize. He knew the distances by heart, the length of the hallway, the angle of the door, the seconds it would take to reach the back of the house. He could reach the man. He could stop this. But Rex didn't move. Instead, he lowered himself, again, placing his body closer to the crib, shoulder firm against the wood, back creating a solid wall. His head turned just enough to keep the window in his peripheral vision while his presence filled Caleb's world. This wasn't hesitation. This was choice. Outside, the man drifted along the siding, careful to stay out of sight. The camera at the back corner caught a partial angle now. Just a shoulder, the edge of a hood, a gloved hand sliding along the wall. He wasn't rushing. He was thinking. Inside, Rex shifted his stance by inches, aligning his body so that if the door opened, he would absorb it first. His claws flexed once, finding traction. His breathing slowed even further. Caleb's cry broke into hiccuping sobs. Rex leaned in, pressing the side of his head lightly against the crib rail. The touch was gentle, grounding, unmistakably intentional. The baby's sobs softened, his breathing catching and then settling into shallow, uneven pulls of air. Rex held. The man reached the back corner. He paused there longer than before. Later, analysts would argue over this moment. Whether he heard something, whether he sensed resistance, whether he saw movement through the window. What mattered was this. He stopped advancing. The camera recorded the stillness. Snow drifting, clouds thickening, the quiet suburban house waiting. Anyone watching without context might have thought nothing was happening. Inside, everything was happening. Rex's ears rotated forward, then pinned back slightly as the man's weight shifted again. The handle at the back door moved. Just a fraction this time, enough to confirm what Rex already knew. Unlocked. A human mistake. A tired mother's oversight. The kind insurance companies and home security system ads warned about in fine print. The door did not open. Rex moved, finally, but not toward the door. He stepped closer, to Caleb, blocking every possible angle of sight. His body curved protectively, creating a barrier that would force anyone entering to confront him before reaching anything else. Outside, the man hesitated. The footage later showed it clearly. The way his shoulders tightened. The way his head tilted as if trying to reconcile what he felt with what he expected. A quiet house. a sleeping baby, an empty space. Instead, something was there, something watching, something ready. Inside, Rex released a single breath through his nose. Slow, controlled. He did not growl again. He did not bark. He didn't need to escalate. He simply held the line. Seconds stretched. Then the man did something unexpected. He stepped back from the door. Not far, but far enough. He wasn't leaving yet. Rex knew that. The pressure lingered, coiled and patient, but the advance had stopped. The test had failed. Down the street, Emily's house filled her vision as she rounded the corner, lungs burning, heart pounding hard enough to make her dizzy. She didn't slow down. She couldn't. Inside the nursery, Rex stayed planted, eyes locked forward, body unmoving despite the tremor that rippled briefly through his legs. Not fear. Adrenaline held in check. Caleb's cries faded into quiet whimpers, his small hand reaching out again, fingers curling instinctively into Rex's fur. The contact steadied him. Rex did not look back. He watched the door. He watched the windows. He watched the space between now and what might come next. Because in that moment, between action and restraint, instinct and duty, Rex had made the only decision that mattered. He chose the baby. And outside, the man, finally, began to withdraw. Emily's key shook in her hand. She missed the lock the first time. Snow clung to her boots as she stepped onto the porch, heart hammering so hard it made her dizzy. The porch light glowed steady and innocent, casting the same soft circle it always did. Nothing looked disturbed. No broken glass. No forced entry. No sign that the last 10 minutes had nearly torn her world apart. "Get it together," she whispered, forcing the key into the lock. The door opened with a familiar creak. Warm air rushed out to meet her, carrying the faint smells of baby powder, old wood, and something deeper. Something she couldn't name yet. Relief surged through her chest, sharp and almost painful. "I'm home," she called softly, already stepping inside. Then she saw the back door. Not open, not damaged, just marked. Thin scratches ran along the lower edge of the frame. Faint. Careful, as if someone had tested the surface rather than attacked it. Emily froze, her breath catching mid-step. Her eyes swept the house. The living room was untouched. The kitchen counters were exactly as she'd left them. No drawers pulled out. No lights on. No chaos. The kind of stillness that should have felt comforting, but didn't. "Caleb?" she whispered. A sound came from the nursery. Not a cry. Not silence either. Something in between. Emily moved faster now, fear sharpening every step. She rounded the corner and stopped so abruptly she nearly stumbled. Rex stood in the nursery doorway, not lying down, not resting, standing. His body was squared to the hallway, shoulders set, legs braced wide apart like a living barricade. His head turned toward her, times 600 mems. Just slightly, eyes locking onto hers in a way she had never seen before. Not excitement, not relief, alert. Rex? Her voice trembled. Hey, it's me. He didn't move. Emily's heart sank. She took one careful step forward, then another. Rex, sweetheart, it's okay. I'm here. Only then did he shift, just enough to allow her to pass. The crib came into view. Caleb was awake, face blotchy from crying, chest rising and falling unevenly. The moment he saw her, he let out a small, broken sound and reached for her with both arms. Emily crossed the room in 2 strides and lifted him, clutching him to her chest so tightly her arms shook. "Oh my God," she whispered, pressing her face into his hair. "I'm here. I'm here. Mommy's here." Caleb clung to her, fingers digging into her coat, breath hitching as he cried again, this time in release, not fear. Behind her, Rex remained standing, watching the hallway. Emily noticed it then, the way he hadn't relaxed, the way his ears were still angled forward, the way his body remained between them and the rest of the house. Her relief curdled into something colder. "Rex," she said slowly, "what happened?" Her gaze drifted to the corner of the nursery, where the small monitor screen glowed faintly. The security system display in the hallway flickered as it updated. A notification blinked. Front porch. Motion detected. Emily's stomach dropped. With one hand still wrapped around Caleb, she reached out and tapped the screen. The footage loaded. At first, she saw nothing. Just snow. The porch. Stillness. Then the timestamp advanced. A shape appeared. Emily sucked in a sharp breath as the hooded figure emerged from the edge of the frame. The way he stood. The way he didn't knock. The way he watched. Her grip tightened around Caleb instinctively. The footage continued. Rex's movement appeared next on the interior camera, his body shifting, placing himself in the nursery doorway. Emily felt tears sting her eyes as she watched him position himself between her baby and the rest of the house. "Oh my God," she whispered. The video played on. The man testing the door. The pause. The retreat. The repositioning. The exact moment Rex chose not to advance, but to stay. Emily sank onto the edge of the crib, knees weak. "He stayed," she murmured. "You stayed." Rex finally turned toward her then, just once. Their eyes met, and something in his expression softened. Not relief, not pride, just recognition, as if to say, "You're back. My job isn't over. But you're here." Emily pressed her forehead to Caleb's and sobbed quietly, the reality crashing down all at once. If Rex hadn't been there. She couldn't finish the thought. Her phone slipped from her pocket as her hands trembled. She grabbed it, fingers fumbling, and dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Emily swallowed hard. "Someone was outside my house," she said, voice shaking. "My baby was alone. My dog." My dog stopped him. Rex turned back toward the hallway, still guarding. Emily didn't sit down at first. She stood in the hallway with Caleb pressed against her chest, the security screen glowing in front of her, Rex still planted between them and the rest of the house. The operator's calm voice came through the phone. Asking questions she answered automatically. Address, name, confirmation that the baby was safe. Yes, he's with me. No, the door isn't open. Yes, I'm locking myself in the nursery now. Her hands shook as she pushed the door closed with her foot. Only then did she sit. The crib creaked softly beneath her as she lowered herself onto the edge, rocking Caleb against her shoulder. His crying slowed, turning into tired hiccups, then into the soft, uneven breathing of a child who had burned through every ounce of fear he had. Rex followed her inside and turned in a slow circle before stopping again. This time with his back to the door, his body angled outward. Guarding. Even now. Emily reached out and rested her hand, time 700 mtong, on his neck, feeling the heat beneath his fur. He was trembling slightly, not with fear, with the aftershock of restraint. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I left you." Rex didn't look at her. The security footage replayed. She forced herself to watch it again, this time slowly, frame by frame, the way nurses reviewed scans when something didn't look right the first time. She saw the moment the porch camera activated and stayed on. The way the man stood outside her house like he belonged there. The way he never rushed, never panicked, never knocked. She saw Rex on the interior feed, his body shifting before anything obvious happened, before the door handle moved, before the glass was touched. "You knew," Emily whispered. Her throat tightened as the video showed Rex stepping into the nursery doorway, widening his stance, becoming something solid and immovable. She watched him choose position over pursuit, protection over aggression. Time. The footage rolled on. The test of the door. The baby's cry. The man pausing, hesitating. Emily pressed her fingers into her lips to keep from making a sound. He was listening, she realized. For the baby. The operator's voice cut in gently. "Ma'am, officers are on the way. Can you tell me if you recognize the individual in the video?" Emily shook her head, even though the operator couldn't see her. "No, I've never seen him before, but—" Her voice broke. But he wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He was watching. She watched Rex on the screen lower his body again, shielding Caleb completely. No barking. No lunging. No chaos. Just presence. Emily exhaled shakily. "My husband taught him that," she said softly, almost to herself. The words surprised her as they left her mouth. She hadn't spoken her husband's name aloud in days, but she could see him in the footage now, in the discipline, the restraint, the way Rex waited instead of reacting. "He always said," Emily continued, voice barely above a whisper, "the best K9 isn't the one that bites first. It's the one that buys time. Time. 10 minutes. That was all Rex had needed. Outside, sirens grew faintly audible, still distant, but real. Emily felt a strange, delayed wave of relief crash over her, heavy enough to make her lightheaded. She pulled Caleb back just enough to look at his face. His eyes were closed now, lashes damp, cheeks flushed. He was safe, unharmed, alive. Her knees weakened. She bent forward and pressed her forehead against the crib rail, sobbing silently while Rex stood watch behind her. The sound was quiet, controlled. The kind of crying adults learned to do when children were nearby. "I could have lost you," she whispered into the wood. "I almost lost you." Rex finally turned his head. Not fully, just enough to check her. Their eyes met again, and this time there was no tension in his gaze, just steadiness. A simple truth passed between them without words. He didn't. The knock at the front door came minutes later. Firm, authoritative, unmistakably official. Emily flinched anyway. "Police," a voice called out. "Ma'am, it's safe to come out." Rex moved first. He stepped toward the hallway, posture still controlled, still alert. Emily followed more slowly, Caleb in her arms, heart racing all over again as she unlocked the door. Two officers stood on the porch, hands visible, expressions serious but calm. Behind them, another patrol car rolled to a stop, lights washing the snow in red and blue. One of the officers glanced past Emily, eyes landing on Rex. "That your K9?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded. "Retired." The officer let out a slow breath. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice, "that dog may have just saved your child's life." Emily closed her eyes. She already knew. The officers moved with quiet efficiency. One stayed with Emily on the porch, while the other stepped inside, eyes scanning the living room, the hallway, the back door. Flashlights cut clean lines through the house, pausing on the faint scratches near the frame. The officer crouched, ran a gloved finger along the marks, and nodded once. "Recent," he said to his partner. "Careful, intentional." Rex stood a few feet behind Emily, posture steady, head level, eyes tracking every movement without aggression. The officer noticed. Anyone who had worked around K9 units would have. "That dog's still on duty," he said quietly. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Her arms tightened around Caleb as the sirens grew louder down the street. Backup arriving, neighbors peeking through curtains, the quiet block breaking open at last. A radio crackled. "Unit 3, we've got movement 2 streets over. Male matching description. Hoodie, gloves, on foot." Rex's ears lifted. Not sharply, precisely. The officer followed the dog's line of sight as if by instinct. "He hears it," he said, half under his breath. "He's tracking through the noise." Emily felt a chill pass through her. "He's not trained anymore," she said. "He's retired." The officer glanced at Rex again. "Training doesn't leave. It just goes quiet." They asked Emily to stay on the porch, while another unit moved toward the back of the property. Flashing lights painted the snow in pulses of red and blue, the kind that made everything feel unreal, like a memory you weren't sure you were allowed to keep. Rex took one step forward. Emily's breath caught. "Rex." He stopped immediately. Not because he was told to, because he chose to. The radio crackled again, louder this time. "Suspect attempting to evade. Cut off at Elm and 14th. K9 requested." The officer beside Emily shook his head slowly, eyes still on Rex. "Time 50,000 mole. We've got dogs en route." As if on cue, Rex shifted his weight and let out a single low sound. Not a growl, not a bark. A signal. The officer stiffened. "What was that?" Emily whispered. The officer didn't answer right away. He was listening. "That," he said finally, "was him telling us where the guy's headed." Moments later, voices rose down the block. Shouted commands, the crunch of boots on snow. A sharp, desperate scramble followed by a thud. "Hands! Hands where we can see them!" Emily's knees nearly gave out. She sank onto the porch step, clutching Caleb, tears finally spilling over as the tension snapped all at once. Rex moved closer, standing between her and the street, his body still angled outward, still protecting. Minutes later, an officer jogged up the driveway, breath visible in short bursts. "We've got him," he said. "Male, mid-30s, tools in his shirt, pockets, gloves, glass cutter." Emily stared at him. He was trying to break in?" The officer nodded grimly. "Not tonight for the first time. He's been casing homes, young families, infants, waiting for gaps in routine. You were targeted." The word landed hard. Targeted. Rex let out a slow breath, the tension in his frame easing just slightly. Not relief. Resolution. Another officer approached. Older, face lined with experience. He crouched slightly in front of Rex, keeping a respectful distance. "Good dog," he said softly. "You did good." Rex didn't react. Praise had never been the point. Emily stood on unsteady legs as the suspect was brought past the house, hands cuffed, head down. He didn't look at her, didn't look at Rex. He moved like someone who knew the moment had passed and wouldn't come back. An officer turned to Emily. "We'll need a statement. And the footage from your cameras, front and interior. It's important." Emily nodded numbly. "You can have all of it." "This kind of evidence helps," the officer said. "Home security footage like yours. Clear, time-stamped. It changes cases. Insurance claims, too, if there's damage." She barely heard him. Her gaze stayed on Rex. "They called him retired," she said quietly. "They said he was done." The officer followed her look and smiled faintly. "Looks like he just came back online." Rex finally sat, not collapsing, not relaxing completely, just enough to show the storm had passed. For now. Emily knelt beside him, one hand resting on his shoulder, the other still wrapped around Caleb. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You held the line." Rex leaned into her touch once, briefly. That was all. The house didn't sleep that night. Emily sat at the kitchen table long after the officers left, Caleb finally resting against her chest, Rex lying nearby with one eye open. The patrol cars were gone, but the echo of them lingered. Red and blue ghosts washing across the walls every time she blinked. Her phone buzzed. Once. Then again. Then it didn't stop. Messages from neighbors first. "Are you okay? We saw the lights." Then calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Then a voicemail from a detective asking for permission to share the footage internally. Emily stared at the screen, heart racing. "I didn't post anything," she whispered to Rex, as if he might worry too. By morning, it wasn't hers anymore. The footage appeared online without drama. No flashy captions. No edits. Just raw video released by the department as part of a public safety notice. A short clip. Time-stamped. Clean. A reminder about home security, neighborhood vigilance, and how close danger could get without anyone noticing. What no one expected was what people would notice first. Not the man. Not the hoodie. Not the way he tested the door. They noticed the dog. The comments multiplied faster than Emily could read them. Why didn't the dog attack? That K9 didn't move. Why? Watch the way he blocks the crib. He chose the baby. By noon, the clip was everywhere. Local news, then national segments, then social media feeds Emily didn't even use. Analysts replayed the moment Rex widened his stance. Trainers paused the frame where he lowered his body instead of charging. Parents shared it with a single line. "This is what protection looks like." Emily turned the volume down and watched in silence. Rex appeared on screen again, standing in the nursery doorway like a living gate. No barking, no chaos, just presence. The room felt smaller watching it now, more fragile. A reporter's voice came through the TV. Experts say this retired K9 demonstrated textbook restraint, prioritizing the infant's safety over pursuit. It's a reminder that protection isn't always loud. Emily swallowed. She hadn't thought about restraint as heroism before. In the ER, heroics looked like speed and noise. Sirens, shouted orders, rushing hands. What Rex did had been quiet. Still. Almost invisible. That afternoon, the phone rang again. This time she answered. "Ms. Walker," a calm voice said. "I'm calling from the department. We're getting requests. Media, training organizations, even a few K9 nonprofits. They want to talk about your dog." Emily looked down at Rex, who had shifted closer to Caleb's bassinet. He wasn't watching the TV. He was watching the room. "He's not a story," she said carefully. "He's family." "I understand," the voice replied. "We'll keep it respectful, but what he did, it matters to people." After she hung up, Emily opened her laptop for the first time since the night before. Time 2000s. She typed Rex's name into the search bar and froze. There he was, a still image captured from the footage. Rex standing broad and immovable in the doorway, shadows stretching behind him. Beneath it, thousands of comments. "That dog didn't attack. He protected. That's discipline. That's trust. That's what every parent hopes for." Emily closed the laptop, overwhelmed. Rex lifted his head, sensing the shift in her breathing. She reached out and rested her hand on his neck, grounding herself in the warmth of him. "You didn't do it for them," she murmured. "You did it for him." Rex leaned into her touch once, then settled again. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house finally grew quiet, Emily realized something had changed. Not just for her, but for how people were watching. The footage had moved beyond warning. It had become proof, times 700, that security systems didn't always come with wires and apps. That protection could be patient. That sometimes the most powerful force in a room was the one that chose not to move. And somewhere across the country, people watched the same clip and felt something they couldn't quite name: relief, gratitude, longing. They watched a retired police dog stand his ground, and they stayed to the end. The donations started quietly. At first, Emily thought it was a mistake, an extra zero, a name she didn't recognize, a short message that felt too personal to be random. For the dog, for your baby, from one tired parent to another. She refreshed the page once, then closed it, uneasy with the idea that strangers now knew her name. By evening, she couldn't ignore it. A local K-9 nonprofit had shared the footage with a simple caption about discipline and restraint. Someone else added a link. Nothing flashy, just a basic page set up by a neighbor without asking. It spread anyway. Slowly at first, then faster. The kind of momentum that didn't shout but didn't stop. Emily sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, Caleb asleep in the bassinet beside her. Rex lay between them, chin on his paws, eyes half closed but listening. The numbers on the screen climbed in small, steady increments. Not life-changing money. Not yet. But enough to loosen something tight in her chest. The mortgage notice sat unopened on the counter. So did the hospital bill. She hadn't cried about those in weeks. She didn't have time. Crying took energy. Energy she needed for night shifts, for feedings, for getting through another day. But now her hands shook as she opened the bank notice, then the medical statement. She did the math twice, then a third time, afraid to trust it. For the first time since her husband's death, the numbers didn't end in panic. She covered her mouth and let out a sound that surprised her, a laugh that broke halfway into a sob. Rex lifted his head. "It's okay," she whispered, reaching down to touch him. "It's okay." The calls followed. A representative from the department asked if she'd consider allowing Rex's story to be used in training seminars. A K-9 unit from another state sent a letter. Time 200 sems, handwritten, thanking her dog for reminding them why restraint mattered. An insurance agent left a voicemail explaining how footage like hers could lower premiums, how home security wasn't just about alarms and apps, but about layers of protection. Emily deleted that message. She didn't want to think about policies or home insurance or security systems right now. She wanted to sit in the quiet and breathe. A week later, she stood in the vet's office, Rex beside her, tail still, posture dignified. The vet reviewed his old records. His injury, the early retirement, the notes that labeled him limited duty. She glanced up at Rex, then back at Emily. "He's not fragile," the vet said. "He's careful. There's a difference." Emily nodded. She knew. That afternoon, the department called again. This time the tone was different, formal, respectful. "We'd like to restore his K-9 designation," the officer said. "Honorary. Full recognition. He earned it." Emily closed her eyes. Rex didn't react when she told him. He never did with praise. He followed her into the living room and lay down near the bassinet, the same place he always chose. The night she finally took a full shift off came quietly. No celebration, no announcement. Emily put on a pot of soup and sat on the floor with Caleb while Rex watched from his usual spot. Outside, snow fell again, soft and steady. The porch light glowed, and the camera blinked as it always did. This time it felt different, not because danger was gone. Emily knew better than that. But because she wasn't alone in the way she had been before. The weight had shifted, just enough to let her stand straighter. She watched Rex lift his head at a passing sound, then settle again. Still guarding, still choosing presence over noise. That night, when she checked the donations one last time before bed, Emily noticed something new. Messages weren't just about what had happened anymore. They were about what came after. Because of your dog, we changed how we train. Because of this video, I locked my back door. Because of Rex, I stayed with my kid a little longer tonight. Emily shut the laptop and leaned back against the couch, exhaustion washing over her in a way that felt earned. Down the hall, Rex lay facing the nursery door. The world had turned, not loudly, not all at once, but enough to matter. And for the first time in a long time, Emily let herself believe that what came next didn't have to be survival. It could be life.